Hey, what's up, guys? There is no moderator of sorts or any other person for this podcast, or I don't even know what you want to call it. But I was just kind of sitting here, and I was sorting through like merch and trying to get things organized for the liquidation sale that went out to the email list early this morning. And, I was just kind of reflecting. I didn't even realize when I woke up today that this is the 15-year anniversary of AIW, which is a pretty monumental thing, and something I don't think, myself included, ever expected that we would be here today, 15 years later, still doing this. So yeah, it's just been, I'm in my house totally alone, like most people have been during the, COVID-19 stuff. And, you just kind of lose track of the days and lose track of a lot of what's going on. And, I just kept, I don't know why, but I looked at my phone at like 2:00 in the morning before I went to bed, and I was like, May 29th, why does that seem like a significant date to me? And it didn't hit me until this morning when I was, going through the emails for the merch stuff, and I took a look. I was just like, I'm going to look and see, why is this date so significant? And then I put it together that this is the anniversary date of AIW. And that may sound crazy that I didn't even realize that, but, when you're doing it and you're just, worrying about the next show or the next 3 shows or whatever, I don't think any of us involved to, the higher extent or whatever of operating AIW have, you don't really have a chance to sit and think about those significant dates. And, you're always so worried about the next thing and how are we going to survive, or how are we going to get through this month, or, whatever. You guys listen to the podcast, I would imagine. So, the trials and tribulations and the stress that I go through. And, maybe that's a benefit of the, this whole, shutdown that we're in right now is, I realized it, and I realized how significant this date is, and what an accomplishment it really is for me personally, because, I don't know what has been discussed on the previous podcast episodes. I know, we've done a me retrospective or origin, and a Chandler Biggins and a Duke and a Wadsworth, and, a lot of these guys that have been around since, close to day one or day one. But, to really understand how, great this is, I guess you have to realize, what caused AIW to even become a thing. Because, if there weren't certain circumstances that happened 15 years ago, 16 years ago, then, this company would have never started. And, I'm not going to lie. I could have never imagined that it would have become what it became. And, I don't really think that, I don't think of AIW or myself or anything as an influential thing, but, I realize that it has been, and it has, helped launch a lot of careers, and, we've worked with so many, amazing people and, legends, and, people that have gone on to, be WWE, world champions, and, none of that could have ever been predicted, because, the company was really born out of just, I don't want to say spite, but out of I'm going to prove you wrong. And I even kind of lost all of that in my, just going along all these years, and you kind of like forget all that stuff. And anyone that's on my Facebook page, maybe you saw this, like a couple months ago, I posted a little AIM instant messenger thing between Chandler Biggins, who was not involved with AIW at the time, and this guy named John Rotten. And it was crazy to read all this, because Chandler Biggins, God bless him, saved so much stuff. And his mom found all of these printed out emails and conversations and all these things he had. And there was all this stuff from basically the inception of AIW. And it was crazy to read, because Chandler had no affiliation with AIW at the time. And AIW didn't even exist, to be perfectly honest with you. To kind of backtrack on, who this John Rotten guy is, and why this all kind of is significant to AIW. I know that we've talked, and myself and Wadsworth promoted a show when I was 15 in 1999, and we did 2, I believe. And the big thing is from that, though, we kind of hooked up with this other group that was doing the same exact thing that we were trying to do. They were just doing it on a little larger scale. It was basically all untrained, but it was in a ring. They were running JT Lightning's ring. They were running real venues. It was the same exact thing that we did, and they were also doing it. So we kind of like linked up with these guys, and they were much older than me. And, as a 15-year-old kid, you're hanging out with like these 18, 19, 20, 21-year-old guys. And it's like, it becomes, you somewhat look up to them. They're like, this is the guy, like he's running wrestling in Cleveland, and, in a different capacity than what JT Lightning was doing. It was a little, it wasn't right, but when you're a teenager, what we were doing at that time like felt cool, and it's strange for me to kind of look back on, because I really looked up to all these guys, and I became friends with them, and it was just kind of like, there was this John Rotten guy, and then there were some other guys, and I was kind of in the mix with them. And I was way younger, and, I was just kind of, I would always help out, and, just like, whatever, like, I was in like their like quote unquote clique or whatever of people that were running these EFW shows. And, if you looked at them now, they were so forgettable, like honestly, like so forgettable and so bad, and it's all untrained. But at the time, this is the cool thing to do in Cleveland. And, these guys were my friends, and they became my friends. And, this went on for, 5-6 years, through that. And, we started another promotion, and we got trained. And, instead of going with JT Lightning, it was, well, we're going to create our own wrestling school, and we're going to hire our own trainer. And I was very kind of involved in that process. And, like when we created this new company, Cleveland Championship Wrestling, it was essentially 4 owners. One was myself, and I was 18 years old, and this John Rotten guy. The Duke was one, and there was another guy. And the shows were whatever, they were very inconsistent. It's hard to even find anything on this promotion, honestly. I don't even know if it ran 15 events, like I would really have to sit down and try to bang out the history of that and talk with Matt Wadsworth and the Duke and all this stuff. But essentially, when I was right when I turned 21, the last Cleveland Championship Wrestling event happened on December 19th, and I was turning 21 at midnight. And that turns out to be the final event, and from there, these guys kind of turn on me for, whatever reason, like personal stuff. I had set this guy up with a girl that I knew, and then, that's just kind of how stupid things happen, as they became more serious. He didn't like that I knew her previously, and not in like any sort of weird way. It was just a friend of mine. And, they just decide like they're gonna, they're turning on me for whatever reason. I'm out, and, things get very personal. And, this is where these conversations with Chandler comes in. And, these guys are basically in the mindset that nobody can exist without them. And they had done it for this, 5, 6, 7 years of promoting events in Cleveland. And, some of them are very successful. Some of those shows were drawing 1,000 people. So the egos involved, on the other side of things were gigantic. And, from that, I'm supposed to be out or whatever. And, I'm just totally like, banned from whatever they're going to do. And, some other people, the same thing. And so from that, AIW is just kind of born out of this guy, like, honestly, his personal problem that I was friends with his girlfriend before they knew each other. So, and that's just kind of how crazy things happen in wrestling, I guess. But, from there, it becomes, well, I know that I can do this. I know that I can do this better than you guys do it. And, especially at the time, when I'm 19, 20, 21 years old, I have a lot of people coming to shows that I wrestle on. If you want to call that a ticket seller or whatever, I have value because I have friends outside of wrestling. So I know that I have a base of people that if I did something, they would come. So, from that, it just kind of escalates very quickly in creating the AIW just out of spite to these guys that think they are untouchable in Cleveland or whatever in wrestling. And, we start, like it was myself and a few other guys that were kind of also on the outs with these guys. And, we kind of got together and formulated this, we went to a Denny's that doesn't even exist anymore. And, we sat down and we started, trying to come up with plans and seeing who we could get involved. And, we had no plans of existing for 15 years. We didn't even know if we were going to last 5 months. Honestly, it was really like we're going to beat you at your own game because you didn't appreciate anything that we did. And, you made things personal for no reason. And, that's another thing is like things got very personal on like wrestling message boards and like, I don't know, probably like MySpace or something at the time. And it's all stuff that I kind of blocked out. And when Chandler's mom sent me all these just random printed out things that she didn't know what they meant, it brought back a lot of memories a couple weeks ago, because I realized how personal things really were getting on their end towards me and towards, Matt Wadsworth and some other people that, are long gone, not really involved in wrestling anymore, but at the time they were. So, it was kind of like, hey, like, we can do this and we can do this better than you. And that was really why the company started, was basically like, you aren't untouchable. We can definitely beat you at this. And you didn't appreciate the people that were helping this thing exist, because I was very heavily involved in a lot of the coordinating of the businesses previously to AIW, like late in the EFW days and then the Cleveland Championship Wrestling days. And it was, always focused on this one guy, like he was the man doing it all, but that really wasn't true. And I knew that, and some other people knew that. And, we went to a Denny's one day and we started coming up with a plan. And, that's from there, we hooked up with some other people that had connections at Peabody's Down Under. And from there, the ball started rolling rather quickly. Like I said, the final CCW event happened in December of 2004. So I would say in a few weeks after that is when the fallout happened. So we put this company together in less than 6 months, because the first show was May 29th, 2005. And, it's just kind of crazy to sit here 15 years later and look back on all that stuff. And I never could have imagined that AIW would become what it was and be this huge part of my life, and so many other people's lives for that matter. Honestly, that was never anybody's intention. We just wanted to beat this guy at his own game and be involved in wrestling. And that was really it. There were no giant grand plans of, anything other than we want to beat this guy because he didn't appreciate us, and he turned on us all for dumb reasons. Like I said, for me, it was because I knew his girlfriend before they dated. And then, other people had other dumb little petty things that, he was on this huge kind of like power trip thing. And it was a very, very, I guess looking back on it, strange thing to be a part of, especially like I said, I meet these guys when I'm 15 and, I look up to these guys, and then you kind of realize like they weren't that good of people. And it was, they really didn't have any plan, and other than, like saying that they were involved in wrestling. There was no grand vision there either. And even though, we all kind of thought this was like, we were a part of this huge deal, that it wasn't, like nobody remembers any of those shows or those promotions ever happening, which is pretty crazy, but at the time, like I said, it was just really about beating these guys. And, I went back and, I read these, conversations, and, I found, all these like really personal, mean things that were posted about so many people, myself, Matt Wadsworth, other people. Yeah, it's just, it's crazy to sit here 15 years later and, I'm packing orders up for t-shirts to ship all over the country. And, nobody ever in a million years would have thought that happened. And, it's pretty cool. I got a little emotional about it today, because it is so important, and it is, such an uncertain time right now, with, will we be able to do it again? When can we do it again? So it's pretty crazy because, we could have been doing a show tonight, for the 15-year anniversary, which, wasn't officially on the plans, like I said, because, nobody ever sat down and thought about those significant dates. I knew that we were coming up on 15 years, and we were planning on doing something big in Akron, which would have taken place about 2 weeks ago. But, I mean, being on a Friday, May 29th, it probably would have fallen into place once Matt Wadsworth would have pointed out, like, hey, this is the date. And, it's pretty cool to have been able to do this for such a long time. And there's a lot of bad times as well, like it's been very trying over 15 years. And, I don't, I wouldn't change it. I think it's really a part of making this company what it is today. It hasn't been easy, and I think that's really what has made us survive, because the company was born out of this crazy turmoil, wrestling war. Like we started into a wrestling war, and we had to kind of, put our head down and figure out how to win when the other side had all these resources and all these connections, and they went on to be non-existent, honestly. And it's just kind of crazy because we were all unknown, and a lot of people were betting against us. And, that's props to JT Lightning, who, admittedly flip-flopped through the, existence of AIW several times, but at the time, he's at odds with those guys on the other side, so he rents us the ring. And if he doesn't do that, we didn't have money to buy a ring or anything. Like I said, I was 21 years old. I didn't have any money. The other people involved didn't have any money. It was really like a collaborative effort to just put on a show, like nobody even got paid at the first AIW show, I don't think, outside of Josh Prohibition, and M-Dog 20. Other than that, it was everybody that was on that show pretty much volunteered, in an attempt to, outdo the other side. And it was a lot of people that were unknown, not very well respected young wrestlers in the area, like the EC3s and the, who is now known as Rex Brody, and so many other people, Dio Salvador, like tons and tons of, guys that were, for the time, never really appreciated or given opportunities. It truly was a collaborative effort for that first show. And, the first, year or two, honestly. But, from there, things, get a little shaky there as well. But, I just sit here and I think, it sucks that Chandler isn't here anymore to see this, because even though he wasn't involved in the inception of AIW, he really was. And even I didn't realize that, because, I'm reading these chats that he's having with this guy, and, he's like telling him that he's coming to the AIW show, and this guy is trying to talk him out of it and tell him we're going to be failures and all this other stuff. And, he did come to the show as a fan, and there wasn't a show that he missed up until he got sick. And it's, Chandler believed in AIW before he had any skin in the game, so to speak. And, without him, there's probably several times where this whole thing falls apart. And, there was times where I was ready to get out. There were some really, really hard times over the last 15 years. And, without Chandler, it probably doesn't stick together. He was really the glue that held it all together a lot of time. So, it's just, it's sad that, he's not here to see, like, we made it 15 years. That was like, I think Cleveland All-Pro made it 17 with a lot of breaks and things in between. We've never really taken a break in 15 years up until this point. There's always been a show on the schedule. There's always been something to do. We've gone pretty hard over the last 15 years. Sometimes we'll take a month off, but it's like, there's been no long hiatus, and even when there should have been, when we are negative money, we have no idea where it's going to come from. We still found a way, and a lot of that was Chandler, and Chandler just refusing to kind of wave the white flag, and we're not giving this thing up because like I said, we're born out of this kind of turmoil. There's various other instances throughout AIW to where that happens, and people get mad, or they try to overtake power, and it's a crazy 15 years, and I'm just sitting here thinking about it all, and it's just I cannot believe that this has turned into what it is. And by no means do I think we are an elite number one promotion in the United States, but I do know that we are in the conversation when you talk about United States independent wrestling. And that's all I could ask for, honestly, because all I wanted to do was be Cleveland wrestling. I wanted to beat this guy named John Rotten at Cleveland Wrestling, and a lot of other people wanted to beat him too. And I think by AIW show number 3, he left the business, which is crazy. And I don't know if that's because of us or whatever, but he left, and he's never been seen again or heard from again since 2005. And I lost a lot of friends on that side of things, and Duke was one of them. Duke was on that side, and when that guy vanishes and the Duke is left in charge, he quickly closes the company, and there are some conversations and there's some tension, and now Duke is integral in AIW. But there are a lot of guys that I never heard from ever again, and they kept that loyalty for a guy that packed up and left, and it was never heard from ever again. And it's really, it's really crazy. It's crazy how wrestling works, and how many friendships come and go, and how much animosity could build up within the business behind the scenes that fans don't even really know about. And there was a lot of that, and that happened a few times throughout AIW's history. And like I said, I believe Chandler Biggins is the glue that holds things together, because there are, 2 more instances in which there is a managerial, so to speak, split of, people leaving or people trying to kick me and Chandler out, and other people, kind of quitting and taking their ball and going home, but they, pretty much had all the equipment that had been needed to run AIW, and there were times where we were just really down and out, honestly, and we found a way. And it's I can't think of every single instance because, like I said, we never really, to this point, like pressed pause and kind of got out of the the war or whatever you want to call it. We've been in the thick of everything since 2005, and it is kind of nice to kind of sit and reflect on all this stuff, because I never really got the opportunity to do it, honestly. And I just wish that Chandler was here to do it, because he was an encyclopedia when it came to things that happened in AIW, and especially things that people that did us wrong along the way. That thing about the list, for all you old schoolers that know what that means. The list was Chandler's brain. There wasn't a handwritten list. Chandler knew it all, and he could tell you the date in which you attempted to screw AIW over, and I just wish that he was here, because if he was, we'd be, sitting in my backyard, and he would be drinking a pure leaf iced tea, and I would probably be having an adult cocktail. And, we would just be laughing about all this stuff, because a lot of it we should have never overcame. We should have never beat a lot of these things that were put up against us throughout the years. And we did, and we're still here 15 years later. And I say we because Chandler is always going to be a part of AIW no matter what. He may have passed away, but, he's going to live on for as long as this company lives on, because he was the heart and soul of it all, honestly, he was such a driving force to keep this thing going on so many occasions, and there were so many times where I was just ready to just give it all up, because, like I say with the, when it's born with all these other guys and it gets really personal against me, that has happened so many times throughout AIW, people, attacking girlfriends I had, and, just really personal stuff about me to put on the internet. And, this is long before, like Twitter and, things like that. We're talking like old message boards, and just really things got really personal and really just really hard to deal with for me, honestly, on a lot of times, because it is tough to try to juggle that, that personal life with a girlfriend, and you have people that are attacking your girlfriend online because she's your girlfriend and she has nothing to do with it. And there was a lot of just bad stuff that went on, and Chandler always would find a way to, keep me kind of in the game and, keep me moving forward. And I'm so thankful for that, because, I know that this is what I was supposed to do in my life, now that I'm sitting here 15 years later. And, I don't live off of AIW. That was never the intention. It was something that I really wanted to do. I always wanted to be involved in wrestling. And the fact that we were able to make it survive for 15 years, I really do feel like this is what I was supposed to do. And it's a good feeling sitting here, just thinking about it all morning, honestly. Just thinking about a lot of the good times and a lot of the bad times too, because a lot of the bad times, they made this company what it was, and they made me and Chandler especially very mentally tough to face whatever we needed to face. And that was the majority of the battles were mental things, like I said, these personal attacks on personal lives, and people trying to find out where we worked and where Chandler worked, and just messing with stuff like that. And it's crazy. It's crazy that wrestling feuds or whatever, and like not even like a storyline feud, like real life feuds, led to all this stuff. And there were some dark times for AIW. When there were fights outside of Monday Night Raws over like turf wars, honestly. It was crazy. They were crazy times. And it sucks that Chandler isn't here to just reminisce about that with me. And there are people like Duke and Matt Wadsworth and Tom Dunn and these guys that have been around for a long time. Pedro, you wouldn't believe the stuff that went on before. I guess way before we had any sort of reach as a company. We've been in business since 2005, but we weren't reaching fans around the world since 2005. And a lot of stuff in those early years was just so crazy in Cleveland. And we went from a war with this John Rotten guy, and then 2 years later the founders of AIW, we split in half, and we split into two more promotions, another promotion. So it goes from that to this, this war that goes on. And, then a couple of years later, another founding member of AIW breaks off, and, he's like, who knows, he makes all sorts of threats still on his Twitter. Now he's claiming that, he's been out for a decade, and now he's claiming he is found some of these old EFW guys from 2005, and they're going to relaunch, and they're going to finally put the nail in the AIW coffin. I mean, you cannot make this stuff up. The things that we deal with behind the scenes that get no fandom or no fan play, like literal death threats. Chandler and I received so many times from people over wrestling. It's crazy. The things that we've had to deal with that people don't even realize. And that's why I wish that he was here so we can sit and talk about this stuff. But since he's not, this is why I turned the microphone on and I'm talking to you guys, because, normally, we would be, like I said, we would either be on the phone or he would be at my house, and we would be sitting, laughing, telling stories, and it's crazy. But it is nice to kind of have this outlet. Whether people are going to listen or not, I don't know. This is pretty crazy though, to sit and think that this has been going on for my entire adult life, essentially. And hopefully it's going to go on for 15 more years, because I have no kind of plan to stop doing this. Especially now that we did put in all those hard years of work and, all the struggling, and to finally get to a place to where there was some, I guess, like a little bit of comfort in success. And, kind of AIW was really becoming a well-oiled machine before the COVID-19 outbreak. And I just hope that, when this is over with, it's kind of like we just turn the key and it's, we're back off and running again. And that's kind of what's scary right now, is what's going to happen. Will shows happen? What are the protocols? What are the restrictions? There's a lot of that kind of hypothetical thought that goes on in my brain right now. But regardless of whatever it is, we're going to figure out a way, because we have overcame way bigger hurdles than any of this stuff that we're facing right now. And, to the average person, that may sound like a ridiculous statement, but for people that have been around AIW since its inception, we faced way worse things. And, this is going to be something that, seems rather easy for us to get over. If we have to institute protocols, we will, and we're going to kind of cross that bridge when we get there, but there will be an AIW show again. I know that. I really do. I know that in my heart, that this is not the end of the road. We made it 15 years, and, a couple months off, I don't think is going to kill us. That really, a lot of that is up to the fan support, but, thankfully, we have seen tremendous fan support during this time. And, that is really just incredible, honestly. We've seen our viewership on independent wrestling TV go way up. We've been selling merchandise on, online, liquidating everything that we have. I couldn't tell you, before COVID-19, the last time we sold a shirt on Pro Wrestling Tees. We've been selling shirts on Pro Wrestling Tees. We've been selling shirts on the Independent Wrestling TV shop. The Patreon subscribers are continuing to go up. And, that's really just an amazing feeling, because independent wrestling, AIW especially, can be something that was easily forgotten. There are real problems going on in the world, but, I'm thankful that you guys have stuck it out with us and helped us get through this, because, like I said, this is kind of a very trying time, and, there was an incredible financial burden that's been placed on us as the months have gone on. There was a rainy day fund, so to speak, built up, but, when you have bills every single month for, what's it been, almost 3 months at this point, it's getting a little low, and we're running a little low. So, that doesn't mean that we're not gonna survive this, though, because we've survived with no rainy day fund. We survived with negative funds, and we found a way. So we're gonna find a way when this is all over with. I know that this has kind of been a rambling thing, but like I said, normally I would have probably just called Chandler, and he would have came to my house, and we would have just told stories for the next 10 hours, sitting in my backyard, or, sitting in my living room, watching, old AIW stuff and reminiscing. But, he's not here for me to do that. And, so I just turned on this microphone, and I decided to talk to you guys. So, there's a million different things that I could say about what all these kind of feelings and these memories mean to me. But, it's just, it meant enough for me to plug this microphone in and ramble to you for 45 minutes or whatever it's been. But, please, any questions you have about any of these things that I just, rambled about, I'm pretty easy to get a hold of, and, maybe I'll get a hold of Wadsworth or Tom Dunn or Pedro or something in these next couple weeks, and we can kind of elaborate more on some of this stuff that I talked about, but AIW was born out of, a crazy, just broken friendship with other wrestling people. And, we had really no idea that it was going to last for 15 years. And, it's kind of funny. Like I said, people went their separate ways, and, you never spoke to them again. I recently on Facebook reconnected with one of these guys that were kind of, in the background, so to speak, but, they sided the other way. And, he was very apologetic for, kind of turning his back on me and so many others 15 years ago. And it's the guy, that we talked on the podcast. He was banned from ECW for life for selling the mass transit tape. He recently we found me on Facebook or whatever, and we've been, we started talking, and it's that it was nice to get some closure on some of that stuff. But it's just it's crazy. Wrestling is a crazy world, and it's. I've lost so many friends and so many, girlfriends and just personal relationships over wrestling and over AIW. And, there was nothing that was going to sway me from this being a success. And, I think a lot of that drive is why we did succeed this long. And, like I said, there were times where I was ready to throw the towel in. But would I have really thrown the towel in? I don't know. I didn't. So, who knows? It could have just been whatever, a thought in time. But deep down, I don't think I would have ever quit on this unless I was absolutely forced to. No matter how bad I wanted to at times, because things were so difficult financially, mentally. But like I said, Chandler always kept me in the game somehow. Would I have really quit? I don't know. I don't think so. But I can't really talk about those moments in time because it's hard to kind of go back and relive a lot of that stuff. But there were some really close. This is it. Like, I don't want to do this anymore times. But I'm glad that didn't happen because, I've gone on to, meet some of my idols and work with so many people that have gone on to be gigantic wrestling superstars. And I could have never imagined that. I could have never imagined that a WWE champion would text me, as a 15-year-old or 21-year-old when AIW started. You could have never dreamed that any of this stuff would have happened. I've had Terry Funk drink beers in my car while I played his album. I've hung out with so many just people I absolutely idolized as a kid, and it's been a pretty cool 15 years, honestly, and hopefully there'll be 15 more. So, with that said, I can ramble on forever and ever and ever. If anybody has any questions or specific things they want to know about, leave a comment below, or, a lot of you are in the Discord chat. I'm an open book. And continue to support us any way you can, Patreon or buying merchandise or anything. As of right now, there's no kind of sign that shows are coming back anytime soon. But as soon as I know, you will know. And thank you for the last 15 years. Until, next time or whatever you want to call it. Hopefully this wasn't too weird. I just wanted to say thank you for the support.